everyone. Thank you so much. Hopefully, I'm seeing some of you again, even if I can't see you right now. I'm wearing this giant headset because I had a little bit of a technical issue on my computer, so I will be looking a little silly today. Um, so last week, I showed you all some puppets I had here, and we talked about the way that light behaves. And we thought that this week it would be nice if I got to show you just some examples of the history of puppetry and just a lot of things in shadow puppetry that I really love. A lot of the shadow puppets that have inspired me over the years. Some of it's going to be some of work from my friends. Some of it's going to be work from puppet traditions from a long time ago. And so we're going to get started in just 1 second. I'll start showing you my screen. Here we go. All right. So shadow puppetry has been around for a really long time. And one of the early types of shadow puppetry is a tradition called wayang kulit, which is from Indonesia, in particular from countries Java, Bali, and Lombok. Now, in this style of shadow puppetry, if you remember when we saw last week using a screen to cast shadow, here is a video of one of those of a modern performance of this very old tradition. Hopefully that volume isn't too loud for all of you over there. I'll try and set it down a little bit. So this is a art form that has existed for over 1,000 years. It began in the 10th century, so that's in the 900s. Here you can see these shows began a lot of they now they'll use lights. In the past they used torches and different types of fire as their light source, and it creates a very beautiful light. We'll just watch that for a moment. These stories tell stories from mythology. Some of them are for entertainment, and they can go on for an entire day, and people will come and go to watch the shadow puppet shows. I'll just let you watch this for a moment or two. So now these shadow puppets that we're looking at, they're made out of leather. And you can see a little bit in this, probably, because we're watching right now. You can see that there's some color there, and that's they use leather and they dye it to create different colors so that when the light goes through it, it produces a little bit of that different color. But also in this style of performance, people will come and watch both from both sides of the screen. So sometimes you'll come in and you'll watch the show from the side where you see the shadow on the screen, and sometimes you might go behind it to watch the puppeteer perform. And because of that, the puppets are also very beautifully decorated so that you can see them when you're looking at them not on the shadow screen. These shows are usually performed by one puppeteer, one puppet master called the dalong. Now we're going to move on to another one. This is now, unfortunately, the next two that I'm going to show you, we don't have any videos because they were before we had cameras, and they aren't a style of puppetry that people continue to do. But you will see that a lot of what we're going to see in these next two are going to come in later on in things that we're going to see later with some of the other modern puppeteers that we're going to look at. So this is the Chat Noir, or the Black Cat. This was a cabaret in France, in Paris, that was going on in 1887 to 1897. And so here we have an illustration someone's done, and then you can see on the right, that's a poster from that cabaret. You can see this is what these shadow puppets looked like. So instead of moving them by hand, they would put them on these pieces, and then they would move on little tracks so that they could move them around. So when you're thinking about making a shadow puppet, if you want to make a shadow puppet show, you don't always have to think about putting a stick on the puppet to make it move. Sometimes maybe you just want to set up scenes with those shadow puppets. Then we have these were sort of scary ghost stories, the Phantasmagoria shows of Etienne Gaspard, and what he used was something called a phantascope, what he called a phantascope. Now, this phantascope is something that, if you remember last week, I showed you those overhead projectors that at least I used to have when I went to school. It's the same idea. It's an early version of it. So here you can see them making the device, the phantascope, has a light source on the bottom, and then it bounces off of a mirror, and then it comes up and out to create these illusions of ghostly things flying around. Um, Next, I want to really quickly, this is one of my favorite artists, and I think I mentioned her last week. Her name is Lottie Reiniger. She was a puppeteer that was creating work starting in 1926, so a while ago too. Now, she was doing a very early form of animation. I bet some of you have watched a cartoon maybe at some point, I think, probably some of you maybe. Feel free to let me know. And by the way, if you have any questions at any point, please feel free to ask them. I'm really happy to answer any questions you have or any thoughts you have about what we're seeing today. So Lottie Reiniger, you can really think of her as being one of the very first people to start looking at how to tell stories using movies, and in particular using animation. And what she did is she took shadow puppets like we've been looking at, and she started using stop motion animation to tell her stories. And these are some of the very earliest ones. We wouldn't have Disney movies or any other animation without the things that she did. So this is from a movie that she did called Papageno, that's based on one of my favorite operas, The Magic Flute by Mozart. So you're going to hear some of Mozart's music in the background, and we're going to see some of this animation that she did with shadow puppetry. We'll skip a little ahead because there's a bunch of titles, I think, on this one. Here we go. There we are. And let me turn up. Oh. This is. Well, I wanted to have volume for you, but it doesn't seem to be going through right now. There. Ah, nope, no volume. Okay, so this we're gonna see this. It's gonna start in just a second. Actually, here we're gonna. It would be so nice to have you be able to hear this music. So I'm going to see if I can see this little. We're having a little issue here. So give me 1 second, okay? Let's try that again. All right. This is great music, and I want you to be able to hear it. There we go. All right. I believe we are going. You let me know if you can't hear it. Here we go. Over again, hopefully with music. Now, Lottie Reiniger made a lot of movies. This one is in the, I think, earlier movie. She starts using some color too. And again, she's using shadow puppets, but she's using a technique called stop motion animation, which some of you may have seen, where you take a single photo at a time, and each one of them connected creates the illusion of movement. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that piece from that. So here, very quickly, here is a movie of Lottie Reiniger herself cutting out one of these puppets. So you can see she's using black paper and using a scissors to cut out the different patterns that she wants, so that we'll see them behind the light. She uses just a small pair of scissors. You could also use, I use a hole puncher sometimes. You can use a lot of different things, or you can find shapes that you like. And of course, they don't have to be paper. They can be made out of anything. So if there's anything that you think might have a beautiful shape when you're making a puppet or showing something with shadows, maybe it's just your hand. You can do that too. Um, I think I showed you last week that you can also use masks and put on a mask and then put a shadow on a screen or wall of yourself in a mask and change the way you look. And in fact, we'll be seeing someone who does a lot of that pretty soon. Um, let's just take another look at watching how she makes. So do you see here, she's making all of these different parts for any part of that puppet that she wants to move. She's cutting those out, and each one of those parts then is going to be another little area that she can create different interesting movements with. And it looks like with this she's using brads, so that's a great one, and I can show you some of those things when we're done looking at these videos. Let's give that another second. Yeah, see, you can see all those different parts of the puppet right there. All right, that seems like a good time to move on. So here we go to the next. This is a company that makes puppets, shadow puppet shows using overhead projectors like we saw last week, like I showed you last week. They're from Chicago, and I think they make really beautiful images. And so we're going to see a little bit of how they work. Here you can see in this photo, they're using those overhead projectors to make an image of a clock that's moving. And we're going to see a video of that right now to get a look at some of what their work looks like. So using those different projectors, by casting light from different sources, they're able to make multiple shadows on the screen, different shadows overlapping one another. The areas where the light is coming through covers up the other shadows, and they can get more and more detail. Some of it is people in costumes in front of the light, and some of these are on transparencies with drawings on them. If you see some of these backgrounds, those are on transparencies. There you can see her with a puppet. So that was a person with a shadow puppet. Here I think is that clock, which is kind of a creepy clock. And I think we saw this girl in a mask for Halloween. And you can see how they're moving different objects in front of the screens and then getting behind them sometimes too to make those shadows. It might be interesting to think while you're watching these what different things look like when you put a light on them and what kind of shadows they might make. Now this is another shadow puppet show from recently. This is called Feathers of Fire. Another great shadow puppeteer named Larry Reed in San Francisco helped make this show. He was the main puppeteer on it. And they do a lot of things with different colors of, let's see, it went away. Let's see if we can make that play. Here we go. So you can see this. So he uses these shadow masks. So these are people, and they're wearing masks with all the cutouts in them, and they're mixing it with shadow puppets of different scales, different sizes of shadow puppets, right? And you can see here a lot of the inspiration that he has from the Indonesian shadow puppets we saw at the beginning. So those traditions, there's still the traditional ones being made by artists. And then you also have a lot of artists who look at that and are inspired by it and try and make new things. And that's throughout the arts, you can see that happen as different people see things and are inspired by it.
Mr. Presser, we have a
Yes,
question from
absolutely.
Elementary. How do you
Yes.
make a scene or setting when making a puppet show?
Could I hear the first part of that again?
Yes. How do you make a scene or setting when making a puppet shadow show?
Great. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. Um, the easiest way is I'll sometimes start by just cutting out a shape for the ground. and just then start figuring out what you want to put on that ground. So maybe you look at it, and maybe you even take a shape. And in fact, let me see. Why don't we, yeah, here, we're going to take a break from this presentation. I will share again in a second, just that way I can show you guys some of what I'm looking at. Hopefully you can see me. So when I make a scene with shadow puppets, I might take something, even just a piece of cardboard. This is from a box. I think probably a lot of us are getting things in the mail sometimes, and they come in boxes. It could be a small box, like a cereal box, or something larger like this. And I might take that and I might look at what kind of story I'm telling, or where I'm telling the story. Maybe I want to show something about where I am right now, maybe something else. And I might take some things sometimes just from around, right? Like here are some twigs that fell off of a tree near where I live. And if I put these together, let's see. In fact, I have a few more. All right. So here we have a bunch of sticks that I got, and I have some tape. I really like to make things with masking tape, so that's what I'm going to use. This is just regular tape, but it's a black tape that I like. So maybe I'm just going to take that, and I'm going to, let me do it on this side so you can see. And maybe I just really quickly, I tape some of that on because I just want to see what it looks like. I think it's really good if you're making things to not worry about doing it perfect the first time. I really like to just mess around with different things that I have around and see how they look. So let's see. If I do this, we're going to have these two trees, right? And then I'm going to turn this around a little bit so we can see the screen, and hopefully it'll come through okay on this video for you. But if I take this, right, and this, and if I get a flashlight working, let's see if we can see that. It's a little, oh, that's flashing. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. And this already, right, if you can see, it's creating a little area with some trees on it. I hope you can see that okay. And then maybe I'd figure out where, say, this puppet, I have this little puppet, maybe he's gonna walk through that scene. And so maybe I'm gonna figure out how big it needs to be so it can walk through. Or sometimes it's fun to not worry about if things are the right size. So for example, I've got this big crocodile shadow puppet head, right? Hope you can see that. Maybe that is going to even come up out of the woods for some reason. Maybe it's like a dream or something. So I think there's a lot of different ways that you can start, but I think the best way to start is just by taking something that you can put things on first, and then lay them out and start looking at what things you like, what you like when you look at it, what you think looks good, or what you think tells the story that you want to tell, whatever that story might be.
The next question, sir, comes
Yes.
from the first question came from Rowan Elementary. The next one is from Rihanna.
Yeah.
How can we use light in different ways? And is there ways to do sources of light?
There are lots of different sources of light that we can use. I think on a sunny day like this, you could even start just by going outside, if you can, safely, or maybe at a window with the light coming in and looking for where the light is falling, where you get the best shadows of yourself, and then experiment with that. Uh, and then you can use a candle if you have someone with you who can help you with a candle. You can use flashlights, lamps. Although one thing is that as you do that, you're gonna see, try different lights, different kinds of light bulbs and flashlights. All of them are gonna make different kinds of shadows. Sometimes a flashlight, if you look at it, you'll see that there's a lot of little different LED bulbs. If you have more than one of them, your shadow is going to give you lots of little shadows because each one of those bulbs is casting its own shadow. So usually the best thing is if you find a light source that is one very bright small light is usually the best. You can also use the projectors that you saw that I used, and really anything. If you look around your house, you'll probably see somewhere a lamp, some kind of light source, we hope. And if you look for them, you can just first try it out, even on the back of a piece of paper, right? If you have some white paper or maybe sheets on a bed are really good. You can just hang that up and try with a flashlight behind it. And if you can see through it, right, then it works as a shadow screen. And then you've got everything you need. You could take a cereal box and cut a rectangle out of it and then tape a piece of paper in there, and you've got a little shadow screen. You can make it and then hopefully just figure out what you need to lean it against or anything else to make it stand up on its own, and then you can experiment with that.
Okay, next question. What kind of animals and statues are at the museum?
Oh, we have so many different animals and statues at the museum. We have first. I'll start with a statue. We have a statue called of the dueling dinos out front of the museum of a Tyrannosaurus Rex and a Triceratops. Then inside the museum, in an area of the museum called the Rotunda, which is in an older part of the museum, there's a beautiful statue of muses, which are from, in this case, Greek mythology. Um, and those represent, in this case, art, science, and history. And that's a big statue. And then we have many different types of museums. We have the North American Mammal Hall, which is filled with different animals. Down below, we have elephants, jackals, many different kinds.
Laura from Ford Elementary wants to know what kind of materials do you use to make puppets?
So when I'm making my shadow puppets, I like to use, for these kinds of puppets, I like to use this type of paper, which is called cardstock paper. If you have, sometimes you'll see envelopes made out of this type of paper. Also, cereal boxes are really good. You want, like, the stronger the paper is, the better. So if you feel the paper, sometimes, like, printer paper, it's very soft and very weak, and you can use it, but something that'll stay, it's a little stronger, is gonna be better when you cut it out, because it's not gonna fall apart.
Okay, next question is, would you give us a tour of your workshop right behind you?
Well, yes, I can. Although I will. I have to tell you all that we had, because of this. Uh oh. Did I leave? Yes, I did. All right. Am I back? Great. Okay. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So here's my workshop right now. It's a little busy right now because we have a lot of stuff in here, but I can show you around a little bit. So here, let's see if you can see it. This is another type of puppet stage called a toy theater that I've been working on putting together here. I hope you can see that. So it's a little miniature theater for doing puppet shows in. Um, here is a big wall of different tools I use here. Um, some of my favorite things are these. These are, oh, wait, I'm not showing you. Here it is. There we go. Sort of. These clamps. Clamps are really good. They're really good for making almost anything. It's always good to have clamps. Someone once told me you can never have too many clamps. A T-square is good for measuring things. I've got my dovetail saw that I use for just about everything. Oh, and what else? Here we got, here's my desk that you can see is also a little messy. And more things here. And this is all in a garage that I turned into my art area in my yard. And there's another shadow screen for something else I'm working on right over there.
Right. Last question again from Ford Avenue, from Ford Boulevard, is what kind of light sources do you use so your pictures will show and change color?
So you can do two things to change color with a light source. Sometimes a light source itself will have a color, but most of the time, what you want to do is find any kind of like a plastic For theater and lights, we call them gels, and you can find them places online. But you can also just find any material that has a color. So if you can see through it, and if it has a color, it'll change the color of the light. And so, say if we use this blue, which probably actually isn't going to show up well in this light, but we can see that the light coming through changes color. So you can put that through. You can also, instead of doing it on the light, if you saw in the um, Feathers of Fire video I showed you, those colors on those shadow puppets, the way they did that is when they cut out those different parts. So if we look at, let's see, if I take this, say, this puppet right here, and if I attached this, if I glued some of this here, right, then when I put this on the screen, the eye is going to be a different color. So you can do it that way too. So you can either do it on the puppet or you can do it on the light.
All right. So those are the last of the questions that they have submitted to us. I want to thank Mr. Prester and the rest of the students for joining us today on our trip, and to the teachers. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Mr. Prester,
Great.
thank you so
Great
much.
to be here. Thank you so much.
All right,
Really
take care.
day.
To everybody on YouTube, take care and enjoy the rest of your school day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.